Hello, welcome to the February 18th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test, make sure everything is coming through as expected, and we will get started in just a moment. Hello, welcome to the February 18th, 2022. Okay, sounds like my monitoring computer is working as expected. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream. I work as a product specialist, primarily focusing on Steinberg products for Yamaha Corporation of America. I'm based in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. area. And I'll be the host for the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream, how it works is we could ask questions in the live chat field, or you could simply or the other way to do it is to send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. If it's a more complicated question, we could do that as well. So how it works is you could ask questions, and as you ask your question, if you could specify which operating system you're running, which version of Cubase, whether it's LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, if it's version 10, 10.5, 9, 11, that information is helpful. And my ability to answer questions live with the chat and keep up will soon be impossible. I will try my best to catch up with all of the questions, but if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if you could try to refrain and not ask the same question repeatedly over and over again, that would be helpful because it just kind of slows down the whole process. We will have all of the topics that have been discussed in the live stream. We will have those pinned to the top of the comments field of the video on the YouTube channel, so you could check that out. But if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to compile that website for us. And you can basically just search for a particular topic, and it'll take you right to the link where you can see the video. I want to give special thanks also to Agent K and Jazz Dude for working as moderators on the live stream. So it's very helpful for helping people out. So they're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of do this out of the kindness of their hearts to make it a better community, and it's very appreciated. Jazz Dude also spends a lot of time compiling information that's relevant to the community and for Cubase users in the Cubase Nation Discord. So make sure to check that out in addition to all of the other Steinberg channels. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself, and we will go ahead and get started. All right, so we see Peter Lawson from Ghana, and his question is, I have an issue with my Cubase video window. The video window openings in a transparent way. It works if I uninstall my VGA drivers. I'm using NVIDIA Quadra FX 1500 and Cubase 9.5. And it says, the same graphics card works in Windows 7 without any issue whatsoever. I'm currently using Windows 10. I sent an email to Steinberg, but haven't received my reply regarding the issue. So is it I'm not sure if I understand if it's the full video screen or if it is the full, or just when you're playing back a video inside of Cubase. And if that's the case, if it's a video inside of Cubase, you may want to make sure that your video card is updated. NVIDIA sometimes can be a little tricky. Sometimes you may want to run kind of a minimal set of features for the video card, so you're not doing acceleration for games, which could kind of often work against you in a DAW environment. Also, if it's for playing back a video, make sure that QuickTime, which is what I believe version 9.5, the engine was based upon QuickTime, so you might have to have QuickTime installed if you could still find it. And it's kind of been abandoned by Apple, which is one of the reasons that we had migrated to non-QuickTime based for the video engine. So if you could give us a little more information, that would be helpful. All right. So we just see a question from Joseph Krikorian. Hi, Greg from LA. I have a question about how to export a stereo mix real time while using SPL Mix Stream Summing Mixer. I can't find a way to export it without tracking it back into the session. All right. So let's see if we wanted to do like a real-time export here, and I'll just solo this project here. We'll set our left and right locators. So obviously when we're going out into the real world, if we wanted to record, you know, we could do that. And let me just see if it's, so I'm not sure if you have the SPL kind of defined, the summing mixer, if you have that defined directly into as an external effect. So some people will do it like that and just put the external effects on the master fader if you wanted to treat it like that. But you know, if it's just kind of going out, you may have to, if you don't have that defined as an external effect, you would have to take the audio outputs of the SPL summing box and patch that back in. But let me just come over here. I'll just do a real-time export. I don't have an external effects connected here, but it should kind of work the same way. So I'm going to choose a real-time export. And after I do this, I want to create an audio track. So I will come here, give it a lovely name, and we'll say export audio, and we'll hear this kind of in real time. And we'll see if that file is now added at the bottom. So here is the file. So, you know, if you have it defined as the summing box, if you have that defined as an external effect, you know, then Cubase knows the input and output routing of the processing. If you don't have it defined as an external effect, you would have to just simply patch it in. But once it's defined as an external effect, you could put that particular summing engine and just put the external effect as an insert, and then it will force you to render in real time. And as you do the real time export, all you'd have to do is do your export audio mix down, and after export, choose create audio track. And then the export's automatically kind of laid back directly into the project. So if you could let us know if you have that set up as an external effect, that would be helpful. All right, so we have Matthew Elston checking in from London. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we just see, is there a way to use MIDI recording like audio? Is this question? So how to use MIDI recording, like audio recording / editing. In my case, I record different takes without using cycle recording. And in the end, I want to comp the parts like audio lanes. Okay, so let's say if I just want it to come here, we'll just navigate, let's say a Rhodes patch here. And I'll just, so let's say I won't put it into cycle record, but I'll just record some different parts. Okay, so first off, I'll take a look at my MIDI record mode. So I'm just going to say new parts. So as we do this, I will go ahead and record a new part here. And sometimes before you do that, you know, if you wanted to do it outside of cycle record, you know, you could just mute the particular event. And as I wanted to record again, so let's say, okay, mute that event. Let's go back and record. All right, mute. And then as I come right over here, So now all of these events will just kind of show up in, and let's see if we could comp them like we do audio. So you could treat it just the same exact way for comping at that point, but you might have to manually, if you don't have it set to cycle record, you might have to manually mute. And you could, do that with the keyboard shortcut for muting the events, which I think is just Shift M. So if you wanted to come here to MIDI event, I think it's just Shift M, and that will mute the different MIDI events or audio events. So we come here, just get the right. So it's just Alt or Option M, and then you could mute and just kind of do traditional comping paradigms for your MIDI, just like your audio. So let me know if that makes sense and works for your workflow. All right, and we have Juniton Studio checking in, who just asked that question from Hamburg. So I miss going to Hamburg. Hopefully I'll be able to get back sometime when COVID is better. All right, so we have Soren checking in from Sweden, as well as Benny from Sweden, Marcos Gomez from Brazil, we have Peter from Montreal, Canada, we have Alexander from Moscow. All right, we have Jan in Stockholm. Okay, so we have a question. Will there be a version of Cubase IC Pro for Android? So there was one originally, and there was, due to kind of fragmentation at the time of the Android operating system, it hasn't been updated. And I think they pulled it because of different technical reasons. But I haven't heard of any plans to develop that for Android. I know that they did spend a lot of time bringing Cubase for Android. But I haven't heard of any plans, but I'll make sure to kind of mention that, Benny. All right. I'm an Android person myself. Okay, so we have a question from Marco Carbone. Hi, Greg. How to save and recall a plugin chain in a channel? All right, so let's say I am on an audio channel, and I've now loaded up many plugins. So let's say, okay, I will come over here to, let's say, my media bay, and I'm just going to drag some VST effects over. Okay, so I will drag it here to this particular channel. So let's say, okay, so we have 4 different effects on our particular channel here. So if we wanted to, you could just click just to the left of where we could power these on, or bypass them all, and you'll see preset management. So at this point I could save effects chain presets. So if I just want to come over here, we call this Marco. So now if I wanted to take those effects, I could just come over here and let's load an effects chain preset. So at this point, here's Marco. So I could just double click and load up the same effects just directly from there. You could also just drag and drop effects chain presets from the media bay onto the track, or we could choose, when we go to add track, we could add the track using the track preset. So if I just wanted to add tracks with all of the effects already configured, we could just do it directly right from there as well. Okay, so we have a question. Can you please explain more the global transpose track? Does the MIDI and audio follow it? How it works? So yes, both MIDI and audio will follow the transpose track. So if I just want it to come over here, I'll just jump to excuse me, I had to sneeze. All right. All right, so let's take a look at a particular project here. So if I wanted to do it for MIDI and audio, I don't think I have any MIDI in this, but it would work the same way. So what we could do is add a track here, and we could call it our transpose track. And how this will work, I'll move this to the top. I could say at this point, I want all of the project. I'll just click here and I'll say, okay, let's go down -2. So when he gets to that point, and let's say at this point, I want it to be 0. At this point, I want it to be 2. So we'll just, and let's say back to 0. So now if we wanted to, like, for instance, we didn't want the drums to transpose, I could select different elements here. And when we see global transpose from the info bar, here we could set it to be independent of the transpose. So now these tracks, when we go to the transpose track, if those are set to independent as opposed to follow, those tracks will actually not follow the transpose track. So you may want that for different drum and percussion, or especially MIDI drums. So you don't want all of your drums, MIDI drums, to be following and play different drum sounds unintentionally. So that's how the transpose track works. Okay, so we have a question. Can you explain how I can add and extract background vocals from the main voice? So sometimes what people will do is come over here, and there's a couple of different ways of doing this. And we could, if you wanted to do background vocals, but let's say if you just wanted to do even harmonies, I could come directly to a file here. So let's say I do, like, I have a chord track in my project, and I want the chord track to actually kind of be the basis for different parts. So if I wanted to do something like this, I'm going to take this piano part that we see here, and we could look at this in our score. So we'll say, okay, here's our piano part in our score editor. And what I want to do is to take that event, and from the project menu, I'll say, let's create chord symbols. So we hit OK, and now this will automatically give us our particular chord progression. So if I wanted to, with something like my range tool, I could select a word and go to audio, and I could just say generate harmony voices. And I could say, give me 2 harmonies. And as we do this, we can. So you could just, create background voices that way. But, it's always super helpful if you know what the chords are. So it doesn't do any good to generate harmonies if they're the wrong harmonies for the chord. So, but once Cubase knows what the chord track is, it can then at that point create those harmonies just like that. And you can do up to 4 harmony voices at once. So let me know if that's what you want to do. All right, we see Robbie Bowling from Dallas. Thanks for joining us. Always a loyal attendee. Okay, so we have a question. It says Cubase Pro 11 user here. When my track is playing, it does not follow the grid. How can I set up my Cubase 11 Pro so that it follows the grid? All right, so I'm not sure if it's after it's been recorded, but let's go ahead and jump back to this project here. All right, so, grid can, so there's a couple of things that this could tie into. So, one of the things is, it could depend on what the actual recording was done with. So, you could switch your master time between two different formats. So you could have bars and beats where that's tied to the grid, or you could have it based in seconds. And the grid will change based upon what is your master time. So often when I get a question like this, is someone may have recorded in bars and beats and they accidentally switched to seconds. And now stuff is when we activate our snap. So let's say if I come here and as we go to nudge, our nudge values, so we'll come over here, open up our nudge palette. So now as we go to nudge events, it's not going to nudge based upon bars and beats, but it's going to nudge based on different values of time or time code. So make sure that, if it was nudging before and it's not nudging now, so make sure that snap is on. So now if we switch our primary time back to snap, I can say, okay, I want this event to only nudge to bars. So I could nudge the start of the event based on bars or different values or quantized setting. But if, and make sure that snap is enabled by hitting the letter J, or we could choose to right click and if I go to seconds as we adjust, we'll move it by different amounts based upon, what our master time format is. So make sure that you have the master time format correctly. And if you hit the period key on your computer keyboard, like just on my keyboard, it's just above and to the right of the space bar, that would allow you to toggle the keyboard shortcut. So sometimes people will accidentally hit that and switch their time base to, seconds or bars and beats from their primary to secondary display. So make sure that you're doing that and that you have J on for snap, and then it should snap to the grid that's defined based upon derivations or breakdowns of your primary time display format. All right, so we see Cubase 12 question. So, Steinberg is working on it. As soon as it's available, we'll be happy to show you all of the new features. But I can't really show new features on Cubase 12 until it's released. Steinberg has shared that it will be Mac M1 compatible. So that's a big thing, and we'll be utilizing the new licensing system. Okay, so we have a question from Marcos Gomez. I don't remember if I did this question. If yes, disconsider, please. But the DSP thing about my UR44, it's only for inputs processing, or can I use the plugins like standalone for processing, like SonarWorks? The DSP is only utilizing the built-in DSP effects. So with the UR44, you'd get the guitar amps as well as like the morphing channel strip and RevX reverb. So it's not going to use SonarWorks isn't capable of tying into that DSP because that's a native plugin. All right. So I just see from Best Korean Jesus, it's been a while, but was there any resolution to making a chopped loop exclusive per email I sent. I figured out a workaround, but like see if it's on, see it if it's on my end. So it seemed like I got everything to work, but I haven't looked at that email. I think I responded to it maybe after the next live stream. Or like 2 live streams, but I could review it again if you want. If you want to, so I think I still have the email, but if you have the email, that would make it easier for me to find. All right, so we have Daniel Drummond who's checking in from Brazil. Thanks for joining. Okay, so we have a question. Are there any special considerations to make when trying to mix vocals to an already flattened track of the instrumentals? You want to make sure that nothing like super special. I would say if you're in that situation, it could be always tricky because you may have kind of, someone may have, it's kind of like decorating a house and someone may have painted and laid carpet down, and then you have to fit a couch in, and maybe it wasn't the couch that you would normally do, but you have to get a couch that may fit the room. So if you have kind of decisions and choices that have been made, to make sure that the vocal sounds appropriate, there's nothing really special with that, but you may have to be more flexible to make it fit in with the instrument, with the backing track, if you will. But, so if it sounds like completely out of context, like, the backing track is, has lots of effects and delays going on, and you do a completely dry reverb, it could sound, out of context for the room. So, the only thing I would do is kind of listen to the ambiences, listen to the tone of the recording and make sure that it's kind of in line. And it may not be what you would do, but, if you had the choice to do the backing track and to work with that, but I would just make sure that it was in context with the actual track. All right, hang on. I may have to sneeze in just a second. All right, so we see Graham Witcher on a live stream. So it was saying it was, I guess we have Storm Eunice in the UK, which kind of ravaged the UK. So I hope everyone's safe. All right, and we see John Costigan on the live stream as well. All right, so we have a question from Soren. All right, so question. Greg, I've seen you paint out, draw out multiple notes in the key editor, an array of 16th notes and 8th notes just by dragging the mouse to the right. Can you explain how you do that? All right, so within the key editor, so if we use some of the different tools, so if you're in the drum editor, it's really fast to just come here and drag across and add a bunch of notes, kind of like so, and that will go in based on your quantized value. But in a key editor, if we just kind of draw notes in, we could draw them in individually. But if we use some of the drawing tools, so if we come over here and go to the paintbrush, I could now just kind of draw in, and I'll expand a window here. So let's say I just wanted to draw in a bunch of notes, and let's say I'll change my grid to 8th notes. So now as I want to select my drawing tool and I go to the paintbrush, I could just kind of enter in notes quickly like so. And I think if I come over here and if I hold down a modifier key, so let's say my quantized value is set to 8th notes. If I hold down maybe the Alt key, all right, so let's say if I come here, I could draw a bunch of notes in. I think that there is a modifier key to restrict the pitch. So let's say if I hold down, let me see if I could find modifier key for that. All right, so I'll try control. That's not it. All right, shift's not it, but I think that there is a key. To allow you to restrict the movements. And let me just see if there's, but yeah, so try just the paintbrush tool. Some people, many film composers will come here and just take like one single note and hold down the Alt or Option key with the scissors tool, and you could cut notes like that. But try just go to the draw tool and use the paintbrush, and then just kind of draw in. So you could do it just like that, Soren. Okay, so we see Michael Teams on the live stream from Weatherford, Texas, and he wants people to whack the like button. So if you haven't hit the like button, if you learned a new tip or trick and want to support the channel, and also if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that as well. All right, and Michael has already given up started dispensing his ice cream, so that's great. All right, so you see Yamaha has plans for a second grade of monitors. HS is nice, but I'm curious if, since MSP 7s are discontinued, if you're planning to do a newer one to be into place. So I think, some of the MSP 7s have been discontinued maybe 5 years or so. So they've been discontinued for a long time. I think that I haven't heard of plans for kind of a new series of monitors. I think the gems in the HS series is the HS7s. I pair myself and love them and use them for many trade shows. That's what I always ask for. So check out the HS7s. I know I've had friends, with big studios that had much more expensive monitors, and they all kind of migrated to HS7s. All right, so we see Marcos Gomez is having hot chocolate milk biscuits with a great cover about jacket and enjoying the live stream, so that's great. All right, so we have Neil checking in, saying Olaf from Arizona. Thanks for joining us and being a part of the community. All right, we have Tata Digital Studio checking in from Finland. All right, we have Steve from Massachusetts in UK, or in USA, sorry. And his question is, Greg, can you show how to render a MIDI track in mono versus stereo? So the rendering is really based upon like what is going on in the particular, like what output that the MIDI track is being routed to. So if you need just a single channel file, what you could do is, if we have something that's rendered, is to just, just to split it. So let's say if I have like piano recordings here. So when, let's say if you want to do it for synth bass, it's probably where most people want to. All right, so let's say if I'm here and I just wanted to record a little. All right, so. Okay, so if I wanted to render this, so, because this instrument and this is now going out of a stereo track, I could, when I go to render in place, it would just place it directly. So say I'm going to come here to my render settings and I'll just choose dry. And now we're going to have our stereo track here. And if you want it to get to the point now where you could just go to, convert tracks and you say multi-channel to mono. And now you could just do mono like that if you wanted to split it. But, if the instrument had a 5.1 output, it could be rendered to 5.1 if the instruments had mono outputs. So a lot of people want to render to mono and they go, oh, it sounds a little different. It's because the original source was in stereo, and that's why it renders as a stereo file. So you could just come over here. If you wanted to do a mix down, you could also, if you get to the export audio mix down, you could choose to, to export as a mono down mix directly from there as well. So, but, sometimes they don't want to change how it sounds so that it sounds the same. And if it's going out of a stereo output, that's why it's often rendered in stereo. All right, so we have Thermonuclear War checking in from Serbia. Thanks for joining. Great to see you on the live stream again. All right, we have Trance 2020 from Berkshire in the UK. A very windy UK that he added. Neil Conway wants people to hit like if they haven't already. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, how can I cut a piece of a sample and keep only this selection as a next sample? I guess new sample. I mean, if I change the length of the block, I don't have the unselected part appears. All right, so let's say if I'm here, let's see if we could just do this. So if I have just that particular section there, I'm going to go to audio, and let's see if I just do a bounce selection and replace events. So now that we've done that, this is its own separate audio file. So that's one way of doing it. So you could just select the actual part with the audio file here. So now if I wanted to take this, there's nowhere to kind of go before and after. The audio file that was underneath, that data is still there, but this is just that particular file. So you use the range selection tool and go to audio to bounce selection, and that will make a new audio file based on just your section, just on your selection. So let me know if that's what you want. And another thing that people often will do is with the range selection, if you go over here to edit to range, you could also, like, if you didn't need to render a new file and you just wanted to get rid of that, you could just select it with the range and say crop, and that would get rid of everything before and after the selected range. All right, so we just see, is it possible to assign two parameters to the same track quick control? I think you could do this by mistake. So let's say if I come, let me put my controller in quick control mode. So let's say if I'm here on a particular synth bass part, I'll come over here to but it's really kind of intended mostly for like one particular control. Let me just see if I get my... All right, so let's say I'll just add an instrument track here. And let me just also just see if we could assign it, to quick controls from the same. So let's say if I learn, so it looks like that that restricts you from doing that. So there's some ways to do it, but it's really intended for kind of one control per parameter. So that that's kind of really the intention. I know sometimes you may want to control multiple things with one knob, but the quick controls are really designed for kind of one knob per parameter to make sure everything is easier to manage and you're not writing automation unexpectedly. John Koskian says we love likes. All right, so we have a question from Luca. Great to see you on the live stream. It says, question for the almighty Greg. This means I'm not going to be able to answer it. So it says, can I have all the monitors in the control room, the ones you switch between A to B, to play simultaneously? I have a hardware switcher and don't need to A/B from Cubase. So, the control room in Cubase will allow you to, to switch from, to switch to different monitors, and you choose which one the signal is outputted to. What some people do, if they, if you have a hardware controller, it may be unnecessary to use the control room for that. So maybe you send like the signal out to your hardware controller and then select your monitors from there. But the control room is intended to send one set of monitors out. So I would just take like your main monitor out, feed that into your monitor switcher, and then send it to your different monitors from your hardware switcher if you have a hardware switcher. But for the most time, you don't have to have a hardware switcher when using the control room. Okay, so this may be a continuation of an earlier question, but how can I cut a piece of sample and keep only this selection as a new sample if I change the length of the new block? I don't want to see the unselected part appears. All right, so I think we just kind of covered that a minute ago, but just in case, I could just select just that particular event, and we could come over here, do a crop, and then a bounce selection if you needed to, and you could actually just do that in a macro. So once we go over here to your audio, you could just now choose to replace the event, and then that's a completely separate audio file. But let me know if that's what you want to do. Okay, so you see just kind of a follow-up. It says, and I need those monitors to be independent because I load different inserts in them. Sonar works, otherwise I just split up a single line. So, while you're sending it out, so it's going to send, just to one destination. So you may be able to set it up if, depending how many monitors you have, you may be able to kind of define one of the outputs here. So if we go to your audio connections, maybe in your control room, if you're doing if you have 3 sets of stereo monitors, Something you could try is just when you go to add a monitor. So let's say I remove this, and now I go to add a monitor that you could set up not for stereo, but for 5.1 or for for 6 channels, and you could have a 6-channel monitor. I'm not sure if that will kind of change the sounds, but if everything is set to like a 5.1 output, you might be able to route your stereo out that way to multiple destinations. But if you wanted to run, plugins on individual ones, I would just consider, maybe using your hardware monitor just as a dedicated pass through and do all the processing you need inside of the control room. All right, so we have Tron checking in from Norway. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have Mike, who's long time no see, so it's great to see you back, and he's happy to be here. Glad you could join us today. All right, so I just see Greg Engineer, quit friends, 30 instrument orchestral piece to video files included, huge amount of audio files, each track. What do I need to convert to Cubase? It says OMF, AAF, ADM, Music XML from Pro Tools. Probably AAF is the best. So I would, if you needed to transfer a project from Pro Tools into Cubase, try exporting it as an AAF file. And that way, if they've done different selections on audio tracks from different takes, the AAF will consolidate that for you. All right, so we have a question from Michael Teams. Greg, can you VariAudio 2 tracks at the same time? I do vocals with 2 mics running, and sometimes I need to tweak the singer. Thanks. So VariAudio is going to be done on a track by track. It's actually done kind of on a file by file basis. So, and there isn't a way to kind of copy over the VariAudio from one recording, from one file to another one. So they'd have to kind of be done separately. So, but I've passed along that feature suggestion as a way to copy VariAudio edits from one track to another, but we haven't seen it yet. So, but I'll reiterate the request again. All right, so we see Cedric from India on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. We know it's probably very late in India. Glad you could be a part of the community today. Okay, sorry, my chat field jumped on me, so make sure. Okay, so we just see a question. I would like to understand how it is possible to export MP3 using different ID3 tags. All right, so if I have this and I wanted to export it as an MP3, we could come over here, and as we do our export audio mixdown, we choose our file type as to be MP3, and then you'll have your edit ID3 tags. So as you wanted to come over here, we could see different tags associated here. So that's all you say. So you say, okay, I want this to be classical. The year is 2022. My track number is this, and a comment. So you could just do it just like that. I sometimes get the question of, if we could put different genres, and these are genres that are recognized by all the, and this is a standard set of genres that are recognized and could be extracted by all MP3 players, hardware and software ones as well. So that's kind of fixed to universal standard MP3 genre tags, but that's how you could change it. All right, so we have Jim Burridge checking in from Devon in England. Thanks for joining. All right, and we see Kerwin Young checking in, so glad you could join us, and he's always learning something new here, and he wants to thank me and Steinberg, and says that Steinberg offers the best DAW support, so we're glad you feel that way, and thanks for being a part of the community, making it better. Everyone Google Kerwin, does great stuff. All right, we have Robbie Crash checking in from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And he's just saying, great live stream. Thanks for joining today. And thanks for the kind words. And we have Hamid from Ghent in Belgium. And Rolf from Germany. I got to go to Amsterdam and Rotterdam one weekend while I was in Hamburg, so with my friend Fady. So it was a really fun weekend trip. All right, we see Jeff Sabelski is happy that he's like number 49. So thank you so much, Jeff. And Mark Rabin is on from Montana. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Cedric, Greg, could you please check if your video resolution drops during the live stream? It's been happening the last 4 or 5 sessions. Should I go to any other video on YouTube? The resolution is 1080p. So I think the live streams are limited to being transmitted in 720p live, and then afterwards will be 1080p. So it's just kind of how live streams work, I believe. So I haven't checked it recently, but we're kind of transmitting at 1080p 60 frames a second through OBS. So and sometimes it could depend, like if the video playback of the live stream is blurry, it could be kind of dependent upon the local internet connection, but I believe that the actual live transmission is in 720p. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Please, can you show how to time stretch, shrink audio to match a certain BPM whilst keeping the same pitch? Okay, so let's say if I wanted to come over here. There's a couple of different approaches for it. So one would be if you know what the tempo is of the original file, it could automatically fit whatever the project tempo is. So let's say if I'm here and I'm just listening to this particular audio file, and if I have the file selected and it's in musical mode, so we kind of know what the origin time is, I can now come over here and say 140, hit enter, and now when I play back, it's playing back without any change in pitch. So let's say, okay, 70 beats a minute. So that's one way you could do it. You could also So if you wanted to do it by BPM, now if you need it to fit into a certain like size without changing pitch, you could actually come to the object selection tool at the top and just put it into sizing applies time stretch mode. So now when I resize the event, let's say I want this to fit into that amount of space, 3 measures instead, it will now play and do that without changing pitch. And if we wanted to also come over to and do kind of a offline processing, if we go to your audio menu and then we go to processes, there is time stretch here. And then once we do this, you'll have the ability to do, different time stretches directly in offline processing as well. So try those things. See Mark Rabin sending kind wishes to people in the UK with the storm and to people in Ukraine. So that's very kind of you. All right, so we have Michael Pierce's soup selection for today to complement Michael Teams's ice cream selection. So his soup is French onion with Roscoff onions, garlic, smoked bacon, cognac, cider, EU style, and beef stock with a toasted Gruyere baguette crouton. And says it should be warm. So that sounds like a great soup. I'm a fan of French onion soup. Okay. Okay, so we see from Mark Rabin, Greg on VariAudio, please request a way to limit the tones. Seems it hears inflections in my voice. I don't, making for lots of notes, especially when I'm trying to just sing one pitch. So, sometimes with, depending on the recording, one thing that you could do, because kind of often when we do this, VariAudio will be, like once it does its analysis, but something you could do, Mark. So let's say if we're here, is if you just go, let's say if we have our tools here set to smart controls, I usually have this set to all, but if you just kind of go to the very end, and let's just kind of zoom in here, and go to the bottom right hand corner, like maybe where you have like little intonations, you could just kind of join the segments together. So think of just maybe going to the lower right hand corner and you'll see it turn into like a paint brush here. So maybe you just kind of, go, and I think even if we just want to hit you hit the left and right arrow keys, you can navigate to the different segments. But, try coming over here. So let's say, okay, there's a lot of segments here. Just go to the lower right-hand corner. And maybe this should have all been one note, but it's maybe just kind of detecting it, or to the lower left or right-hand corner. And then you could kind of just re-segment the audio, and then you could change it like that. So, but I don't think that there's, that's kind of what it's figuring out for the sensitivity for the algorithm to work. But, try just joining the segments by going, and you may have to be, and if you go to the smart controls, set that to show all smart controls. Okay, Great to see Randy Lee's able to join us from Texas today. We see kind words from Mark Rabin, just thanking me for having the best live streams. I think it's the community that also makes it the best live stream. I just answer questions. So, and if people have great questions and great insights to share, then it's the live, the live stream is much more than me. It's everyone that's a part of it. And it's a wonderful community, and I feel lucky that I get to be a part of it. All right, so we see Neil Conway just saying he's getting 1080p right now, so maybe there was some changes. I haven't looked at it in a while for YouTube settings, but we are transmitting at 1080p. All right, so a question from Soren. When it is a fact internal processing is 32-bit float according to setup audio system, should the project be run in 32-bit float? Should one always dither the mix down even to 24-bit? You don't have to dither the mix down. So a lot of people actually prefer to deliver a 32-bit file. So, you don't have to do dithering. If you're going to send it to someone else, like keep it the full resolution the whole way. And, if you're sending it to mastering, let them, do the dithering. If you're doing it yourself, you can dither. But, I tend to always keep one file at the highest possible resolution, and then you can make other files based from there. So, and, the original project doesn't have to be 24-bit or 32-bit float for that to work. So when we're dealing, with audio, let's say if we just play the audio file back, at that point, it'll be 24-bit. When we want to actually, apply any processing, and this could be where we actually do something like, increase the gain by 1/100th of a dB. We add EQs, we add different effects. Then at that point, we want to be able to maintain the original bit depth of the audio file, let's say 24-bit, and not lose information because we're adding new components, new parts of the sound. We want to be able to kind of maintain that resolution throughout the whole status. So we want to be able to add those different things like the EQs and the processing and the effects while not sacrificing the original 24-bit file itself. So, and if now that we have like converters like our URC audio interfaces that have 32-bit integer converters, what we can do is just have 64-bit floating point precision. So just because you're working in 32-bit floating point, you could take 24-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit audio files and have those all benefit from working in 32-bit floating point or 64-bit floating point mix engines. All right, so we see Pablo from Galicia, España on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question about exporting the video. Is it possible to change the resolution in Cubase to be 1080 by 1920 instead of 1920 by 1080? So I think the resolution is going to be fixed. So I know sometimes, I get this question if someone wanted to, take a video that was like recorded on a phone in portrait mode and flip it or vice versa. But, when you export the video, it's going to be kind of, intended to work on how most computer displays and televisions are oriented for 1920 by 1080. See, Jeff Sabelski is saying that Michael Pierce's soup sounds better than his morning grapefruit, as well as better than my plain oatmeal that I had for breakfast. Okay, just reading through comments. So thanks for all the great questions. All right, so we just see from Tata Digital Studio, please, how can I get VariAudio using Cubase Elements 11 on Windows 8.1, 64 bits? So VariAudio is kind of a great feature, and it's not in the Cubase Elements level. So maybe consider jumping up to Cubase, upgrading to Cubase Artist or to Cubase Pro, and that would have a VariAudio. All right, so we see Michael Pierce has got a dash for a mystery session, so we hope you can make it back. Have a good session. So just see a comment, you rock, Greg. All right. Used to playing bands, all right. But thank you for the kind words. All right, so we see, hi Greg, how can I make a command in Logical Editor to select certain partials of triplet figures? I have them all for 16th and 8th note, but can't seem to get triplets figured out. Okay, so I think when we go to the Logical Editor, let me just paint in. Let's do a new project here. Okay, so let's say, and I think this is probably something, maybe like selecting every other, every second note in a triplet, something like that. Okay, so let's say I wanted to just paint a bunch of notes in. And I'll do this as 16th notes. Okay, or let me just put it in as 8th note triplets to start with. Okay, so I want to, let's go to our logical editor. And I think that the bar is going to be broken down into tuplets more. So let's say if I wanted to, let's say select, and we'll say it's equal to MIDI notes. And we want to say that the bar, we'll say position is going to be let's say inside bar range. Okay, and then once we have this kind of set, you may have to make my editor here to be the same, roughly the same size as the bar range. And I know this is kind of eyeballing it, but we could say right, and I'll just add a number of these, and I could probably figure out kind of the exact I'll just kind of add multiples of these, and we'll see how many we need. All right, and here we want to say this would be set to OR. Okay. So if I wanted it to be like selecting the second note in the triplet, so if we do something like this, now let's say I wanted to take these notes. All right, and let me get the first one kind of lined up here a little better. All right, so here, so, we could kind of set this up, and this would be maybe selecting, and I could kind of tweak it, but you could see that as we do this, I want to select within the bar range roughly like the second note of a triplet. So we can see kind of the second note. I don't have this very first one dialed in. And then if you wanted to shift these, so you could have the third note within the triplet for eighth notes, the third 16th note. So that's how you could select, different meters, different options for meters. Let's see if I just come here, if that makes any difference. So if I just get this first one kind of sorted out. So, but you could kind of set it up like that, Nick, and then you could shift these all to be the second triplet. It's not the most precise element that you do, but you could select the notes. Maybe if I just, okay, I was going to say or here. And now I think that this would work. Yeah, so now you could select like the second note of the triplet just by kind of setting this up. So we could say, and I'll just add this as a preset, or we'll say select second eighth note triplet. So now that we have this done, setting time, and you could do kind of the same thing for 16th notes. So we could say, you're going to have a position, and you could just do the math here of where your position is. But make sure you do it, set it to or, and then that would select the second note in the triplet phrase. So give that a try, Nick, and let me know if that does the trick. If you want to email me if you still have problems, I could do a preset and send it to you. Okay. All right. So we just see question. Can you explain the menu with touch on the project page? All right. So this would be for automation. So when we come here, we can say, let's get to our Amos Moses track here. All right. So when we see touch, what this is going to allow us to do is and we could do this with the automation mode. So when we have a project going on and we're automating it, now when I'm, wanted to automate a particular track, let's say our bass, and I had this set to touch. So I'll just come over here, click on, so now it'll start writing automation as soon as I touch the fader, and as soon as I let go, the automation stops writing. So as soon as I touch the fader, that will automatically just write the automation. It's not going to write any automation until it's actually touched, like touching a physical fader. Now you can put it on to auto latch, where at this point it'll write the automation like until you stop. So if I rewind and if I let go of the mouse, so I move the cursor over here, it'll still, with auto latch, just continue to write that level of automation until I stop. So touch would allow you to just do that. So that is kind of allowing you to switch between different automation modes. So all right, we see everyone else is so happy to see Pablo in the live stream. All right, my chat field jumped on me, so okay. Okay, so we see Greg question regarding 32-bit versus 64-bit. What is the practical difference for listening, or is a higher bit depth to support downstream processing? The original intention, if you have golden ears, I was just spending some time with Gary Pechosa and Chuck Ainlay in Nashville. And these guys have amazing ears. And I've shared the story of my friend Greg Lukens, who lives near me, who's a blind mastering engineer, probably has some of the best ears in the world. And I actually sent him a process where I did a mix and exported it as a 32-bit float, and did the same mix and exported it as a 64-bit float. And he heard the difference, but couldn't quite describe what it was, even though it was the same project. The main reason that we went to 64-bit float is because we're coming out, there's now the ability, for years and years, audio interfaces were kind of capped at 24-bit converters. And when we came out with our AXR4 interface, and after that, our URC audio interfaces, the converters were 32-bit integer. So we did 32-bit floating point because we could take a 24-bit signal and then run it through a mix engine and still retain the quality of the original 24-bit signal. And that's what the 32-bit float would allow you to do. So now doing 32-bit integer, so capturing a 32-bit word file, not a 32-bit float, but a 32-bit integer file, with the same concept is we need to have more resolution than the initial file to maintain the original integrity of the audio file. So that's why we introduced 64-bit double precision, so that we could have a higher mix engine resolutions for dealing with 32-bit integer files. So some people can hear the difference. It's going to be really subtle. But there are people that can hear the difference definitively every single time. Okay, so we have from Michael Teams, please set up a marker track again, please. My dinosaur brain either missed it or didn't click it when it was on. All right, so let's say I wanted to create a marker track, and I'll just create a marker track. I'll just undo the divide track list feature here. So let's say at the top, I wanted to add a new marker track. So I will right click, let's add track, and we'll choose marker. So, and as we add our markers, to drop markers in on a Windows platform, you could just hit insert key. There's no insert key on a Mac, so there's no default marker assignment, but you could just kind of click here. As we're adding the markers in, you hit Control M. We can now come over here and say, cool part. And we could leave this on top. So it's say, oh, now I just wanted to, drop a marker in. Okay, we can say mistake. And let's just come right over here. Let's go to functions and let's insert a marker. And this will give you the name field. You can say solo, or this is too long. And now if we wanted to navigate between these different markers, we could just hit kind of the, you hit the N or B or shift N and B to just, navigate between your different markers like so. So that's all you have to do. And you could have up to 10 marker tracks if you want in your project. So let me know if that helps, Michael. All right, so we see just a question. Will 11 Pro be Apple Silicon ready as well as 12 Pro? So Apple, the current functionality is Cubase 11 will run under Rosetta, and that works great for a lot of people. And Cubase 12 will be M1 native. So I don't think we'll see, and it's a tremendous amount of development that went in to do that. So I don't think we'll see it in the 11 cycle will be Rosetta, and 12 will be working in, M1 native. So. Okay, so we see, hi Greg, can you show how to create a pitch shift automation lane on Groove Agent MIDI tracks so I can draw pitch automation for hi-hats, claps, percussion, etc.? Okay, so let's go ahead and take it. So I think we could do it pretty easily for either, just get to the right project, for either Beat Agent or Groove Agent files. All right, so let's say if I was on Beat Agent here, so let me just, I'll just open up the editor. So let's say if we're playing along here. Okay, so now if I wanted to go to edit the instrument, so I wanted to now come here. So I'm just going to take my hi-hats and let's say so I know the drums we could tune. So it looks like the cymbals, but if I wanted to like do the drums, and we could do it in a acoustic agent. But let's say if I just wanted to now come over here, we'll say assign to new automation. All right, so let's just see if we can take the tuning here. Okay, so we'll just open up our automation track here. So we'll say this is our tuning. All right, so say I want to take just a snare tuning, and I could just come here. So now as we play back this project, and we'll listen to our snare. So I just right-clicked on the drum. So we could do stuff like that just by kind of right-clicking on the drum itself, and as it plays, we could just draw in. So, but all you have to do is right-click on the drum, and you'll say, okay, I just want to take this particular parameter. So right-click on the parameter, and then you can say show snare tune automation track and draw it in. If you were doing it on, so it looks like you do that on drums, but if it's a beat agent kit, let's say one that's kind of more MPC styled, we could do this, I think, quite easily. So let's say as we're playing back, all right, so let's say if I want to take the hi-hat here, so again, I could come right over here. We'll say course tune. So right click and we'll show it in the automation track. So now as I just wanted to draw in, at this point, I'll hit play in Cubase and we'll have that track soloed. So say, and then you could also do some other interesting stuff. Like if you want to create, different patterns, I could go to my automation lane here and just say, okay, I wanted to create, let's say I'll create just a pattern here that's one bar. And, if you wanted to just, let's say over 2 bars, and at this point we could choose to put in like a new point here. So, you could do like different components like this as you play. So just listening to the hi-hats and now, or kind of anywhere in between that you want. So, if you wanted to, again, just kind of come right over here to, let's say if we have a couple automation points here, I'll set this, and now so all sorts of fun stuff that you could do and just kind of even replicate patterns for automating pitch of different drums in Groove Agent. All right, so we see what menu option in Cubase improves my rusty guitar playing, quantize with swing or similar. So, you know, what you could do if you run into projects, let me see if I have this. So it may not be a menu function, but if we come here, so I'm just going to go in the sample editor to hit points. And let's say that's not quite, you know, so really if I just wanted to even just come here, we could activate the quantize and say, okay, I want this to be quantized to 16th notes. I'll just say quantize. And you could just kind of can quantize, but if you wanted to, once you have that done, you know, we could say in the event editor, you could just say, okay, I wanted to go to create warp markers, and now I go to audio warp. And let's say if I just put on free warp with the warp markers, so let's go back to hit points. Let's create our warp markers, activate free warp, and now you can, as soon as you see it turn white, at that point you could just kind of warp each of the notes here. So if it's a little sloppy or rusty, just do some free warp on it. All right, so we see Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we see a question. Hey, Greg, how's it going? I'm doing great. Is there a way to have Cubase automatically color coordinate a new track? Thank you. So there's some preferences for this. So let's say I do a new project. We will come over here. Let's add an audio track. Okay, so right now I don't have any particular colors assigned, but if we go to your preferences and we go to track and mix console channel colors, there's a I usually set this to add track channel color mode of use previous color +1. So now if I come over here, I add a number of audio tracks, it'll now automatically colorize them. So, and you could get into also stuff like the project logical editor. So if it contains the word bass, make it this color. If the track says, you know, guitar, GTR, make it this color. Make anything with these words in track names go to the drum color. So hi-hat, you know, kick, tom, overhead, snare, SNR, kick, KIK, KICK, you know, KIX if you want, you know, if you're a fan of the group Kicks, so you could do stuff like that and also color coordinate different things. But if you wanted the colors to automatically be added, or if you wanted to select a number of tracks and turn them into one particular color, you could just select them and click here and colorize all the tracks like so. All right, so we have a question. Hey, Greg, how do I swap the drums on a preset pattern on Groove Agent 5 because it won't let me drag and drop swap? Okay, so let's say if I have a pattern here, so let's go to Groove Agent. Okay, so I want to take my Groove Agent patterns here. So let's say I'm playing this one. So say, okay, I got this pattern. All right, now if we go to the folder pattern here, I could just say, okay, I want it to go to styles. So let's say, okay, I want it to be blues. So now I could just double click while it's playing. Or let's say I want it to be alternative rock. So same kit, but just trying out. Now, as you do this, maybe not every pattern will work, but you know, most of the stuff should just kind of carry over. So say 80s rock. So once again, make sure that you go to the little folder icon here and just click on styles, and then you could just try out different patterns like that even while it plays without stopping anything. So let me know if that works for you. So we see Jazz Dude just saying, if you like this informative hangout, subscribe and don't forget to hit the like button. So my chat field just jumped on me, so let me go back to where I was. All right, so we see a question from Jeff Zabelski. Downloading project from owner's Google Drive, 15 gigabyte project with additional 30 gigabytes of video. Is there a better way to access files? Would FTP be better for picking and choosing? Google Drive is limited. You know, so a lot of people use WeTransfer. You know, Dropbox is also very good. For our corporate account at Yamaha, we use Ignite, and that works surprisingly well. You know, most of our corporate things aren't so good, but I would say Ignite works really well. I'm not sure if that's more of an enterprise solution or something that's available for users, but a lot of people, you know, WeTransfer seems to work really well. You may have to look at an ad for the unpaid version, but I think, you know, it's a small price to pay, but Dropbox would be better. FTPs can be a little tricky, you know, if you have, and could require like an FTP software. But sometimes, you know, just dealing, you know, how the person prepares the files, like if they're all in like, you know, different zip files or one zip file, that can make it a lot easier. Or if you're kind of reconstructing folders, that could be trickier. So whenever I have to share multi-tracks, I just make sure it's really obvious that the person, I try to make it difficult so that the person on the receiving end can't mess it up. But some people don't upload with that mentality. So. All right, so we just see a question about licensing. It says, I'm still not sure if I install Cubase 12 on a third PC. I'm not sure people at that PC will leave it alone. Only used by me is in the license. What happens if Cubase 12 runs on two PCs at the same time? So I'll kind of let you know as it's released, but I think, so we'll just have to wait and see. I don't think it'll be a problem. Because, you know, they did change it so it's not checking in all the time, and you don't have to have an internet connection, but you could give it a try. Currently, if you get like the Dorico SE license, and you could test it yourself. Okay, so we see from FJ Segovia says, I have, for example, 5 different sounds on the Hallian Sonic rack sounds. Always is sounding the number 1, although I select the number 2, it sounds number 1. Thank you very much. All right, so it sounds like maybe when we add different sounds into Hallian Sonic SE. So I'll just, let's see, and I know this is directed at Jazz Dude, so but maybe I could take a stab at it as well. So, you know, when we add sounds, let's say, okay, I have a Rhodes patch here, and I wanted to add maybe a pad sound. So now if I play this, and let's say I wanted to add a string sound on channel 3. So we have 16 slots. So let's say I wanted to add a sitar. So we'll add these 4 sounds. All right, so, but when I play, this track is sending to MIDI channel 1 to Hallian Sonic SE. When we go to the MIDI tab here, we can notice that this is going to MIDI channel 1. This is going to MIDI channel 2 is the silk pad. So if I switch this to 2, or if I wanted to go to silk strings and go do my silk strings, and let's say I go to channel 4, we have this 6 sitar. Now, if I wanted these to all respond to one MIDI channel in a layer, all we had to do is go to this channel and switch these all to channel 1, and now we can create our layer. So when I play a chord, and at that point, you could choose different ranges. If you say, okay, I want this pad to be an octave higher. So now when I play, and I want strings to be an octave lower. So stuff like that. So let me know if that's what you want to do. It's from FJ Segovia, from Madrid. All right, so we see Michael Teams has gifted me 1 gallon of Texas pralines and cream ice cream. So for my family and myself, thank you very much, Michael. It's very generous. All right, so we have Dave Griffiths checking in from Wales in the UK. Okay, so David Griffiths asked, Greg, could you talk us through setting up a new piece of external kit, Micro Monster? Sorry, my text is small in my chat. Arrives next week. A desktop synth module, no keyboard. So I'll be using my key step linked with USB MIDI to the PC. So probably, the vast majority of desktop modules will have a USB connection. So if that's connected to your computer, all you need to do is to come over here and add a MIDI track, and you could give it a name. And at this point, we want to choose the MIDI output port where it's connected to. So let's say, this is going out to my Steinberg UR24C, or it could be probably the USB driver. And then whatever MIDI keyboard you play will send MIDI to that device. And you may have to take the audio output of that device and get it sent into Cubase. If you have additional inputs on your audio interface, we could go to your audio connections and connect it via external effects, or you could, external instruments. So you could just say, okay, this is going into inputs, 3 and 4 of my audio interface, and then that would do it. Or if they're all kind of going out to some form of a mixer, you could do that and combine the audio outs of your particular instrument with the audio outs from your directly from your audio interface as well. Okay, so we see, hi Greg. I routinely recorded 64-bit floating point at 48 kilohertz because my creation station can do it with a UAD Apollo bit size unknown. Is this foolish? Thanks. So you're probably not really gaining anything by recording at 64-bit floating point unless you're trying to record with effects, inside, but the UAD Apollo is only a 24-bit converter, I believe. So you could just do it at 24-bit, and you could try it and see if you notice a difference in files. But I think it would be very subtle because you don't have, because the resolution of the converters won't really be taken advantage of because it's limited there. You see David Griffith is squished the like button, so thank you for that. Okay, so we see from Soren says, thanks for the key commands today. I picked up on Shift M and Control M and insert and marker track. I've also tested myself and found Alt M to unmute. Thanks again for Snap also. So yeah, whenever, like what I try to do as I'm in a project, if there's something that I have to, get a keyboard shortcut, I just try to make myself learn a new keyboard shortcut. If you learn one new keyboard shortcut every day and put it into your workflow, that could be like the best thing you could do to really speed up working in Cubase. The fastest person I've ever seen run Cubase is Stevie Wonder. So because it's all keyboard shortcut driven. So we see a comment from Neil Conway about the resolution. So it says 1080p only comes when he's in full screen and he has YouTube Premium. So maybe that is a factor. All right. Hi, Gregory. But is there a way for Cubase to determine what the sample rate and bit rate of an audio file is before importing it into a project, before it asks you if you want to convert to project? So let's say if you just go to your media bay, you could look through any audio file on your system. So let's say I want to come over here to documents, and let's say to projects. And then at this point, before it's imported into the project, we could kind of scroll over and see the bit depth and sample rate directly inside of Media Bay. So that's an easy way to determine what the bit depth and sample rate is of the file before importing. Just reading through some comments here. My chat field just jumped on me, so. See, Pablo is just saying that guitar player in that track is awful. So, but I asked him to be awful. So, okay. Okay, so we have a question. In Cubase Score 11 Pro, can you please explain the insert to voice 1, 2, 3, 4 along with the L icon? The lock insert staff at the top left of the window. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so let me just create a quick chord track here so we could set this up. Okay, so I'm just going to create some notes here. All right, so let's look at our score. All right, so if we have, so we could go, when we go to our score settings, you could set this to, be a split staff. So we could say, okay, particular notes are going to be in the treble clef, and I'll just say, let's try just maybe split it here. Okay, so if we wanted to have now when we're doing some stuff like complex piano voices, we could have different voices that will be set up. So as we want to do kind of I want it to have 4 voices. I could say, okay, let's just split all of these notes here really quickly. Okay, so say now if we wanted to go into the score editor, we could choose for, if we've set up the staff mode, to be polyphonic, we could choose different voices to be in. So I could say voice 1 and 2 is going to be in treble clef, and if I wanted the stem to be up and down, so at that point I could select a particular note here. So let's say I'll just take this into page mode. So if I wanted to take, this particular note, we could choose to just kind of, let's see if we can just do it here. So I could say, okay, I want it to display it in this particular staff. And if we wanted to, flip the particular note, so, we could move it to different voices here. So that, because we may have, different counterpoint that's going to be kind of spread throughout. But at this point, we could just say, I want it to, we get to our scores menu. Let me just see if it's going to be. So that's kind of what the, moving to voices that are defined, so that we could just have those particular ones. So that's kind of the intention of the voicing, so that these could, follow different stem directions. So as I wanted to insert voices, so, and when we see the L, that's just going to be because you have different layers for, like, different components. So you can say, okay, I want it to have, the note layer, like dynamics, and all of those different functions that we could have set up. So. Okay. All right, so we're seeing a feature request for Cubase 12 for possibility of modulating effect parameters. So, but we'll pass that along. Okay, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. All right, so we see Steve Allen just saying power cut out in his studio mid-session due to storm there. So UPS batteries, until UPS batteries run out, well, at least you're able to save. So we hope everyone is stay safe in the UK from the storm. I saw about it in the news. So it's crazy weather. It seems like it's everywhere. So you just see, can I select a track and specify the numbered duplicates of that track I desire? I know that could be done in other programs. Thank you, Greg. So, when we have a track, we could duplicate it, one time, once at a time. You could create a macro and say duplicate 8 times. So if you wanted to come here to key commands, we could just go to, create a macro and just say, duplicate, 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 duplicate. But the duplicate tracks is really kind of set up. The operation will do it once, but you could, select 2 tracks, duplicate to get 4, 4 to 8, etc. So. Okay, so you see, thanks, Greg, but I still needed to swap the drum sounds. I mean, but at least I can use the style folder now. Cool. So if you wanted to come over here for, particular drum parts, so I think this is kind of more of a follow-up with when we're trying out this. So let's say, if I have this and I wanted to try out different instruments or different kits, we can kind of do the same thing. So I could say, okay, I just want it to, have a jazz kit. So I could come over here, and while that pattern is playing, so, or if you wanted to swap out instruments, we could just say, on individual ones, but you could, just kind of come right over here and swap out kits or instruments or styles, all kind of the same exact principle. So. All right, so we just see, okay, so we see Nick made all the presets for his selecting different components of triplets. And he said, ouch, his eyes. So, but you got it done. You don't have to think about it. So you see a question, whatever happened to Rocket Network, by the way? So, they were kind of, Rocket Network was kind of an early collaboration, like an online collaboration thing where you could record people, online over the internet. And it was kind of the height of the Silicon Valley bubble, and they're even headquartered in San Francisco to make it even, but, they had a lot of technical issues, and I think they just kind of went out of business. So it was kind of the, of the era, late 90s-ish, Silicon bubble. They're probably a victim of that, probably ran out of funding and shut down. So, but the Res Rocket Surfer, I think was their name, which was chosen from completely random words pieced together from a program that would just create random words. Okay, so we just see, how can I select an audio event and hit Q to quantize the hit points to whatever the grid is set to without opening the hit points menu? So, if you want the event itself to be quantized, so let's say if I just wanted to jump to, so I'll remove all hit points here. So let me just, okay, so now even if I just come right over here, so I take my bass part and let's say I wanted to quantize it to eighth notes, I can now, just with audio warp enabled, we could just choose to quantize just like that. So we were able to, once you have audio warp enabled, you could just quantize the audio, but if we, Cubase will just kind of automatically, as it's recording, something I think that was added maybe 10 or 9.5, where it will automatically create, hit points during the recording process. So if I just wanted to come here and we'll say choose edit hit points, now when we wanted to quantize a particular event, and I'll just remove these very quickly again. So I'll activate the project. That'll make more sense. So now if I just wanted to, quantize, but since the hit points are automatically calculated, when we go to the event, you could just, so as we come right over here, we'll say, I think we'll just adjust our threshold. And now you could, just create the warp markers and then kind of quantize. Let's do a different value here, say quarter note triplets. So as we do this, so if I just wanted to remove all the hit points and say, okay, I want to do half note triplets, you could do that. But the audio, the hit points are kind of automatically calculated, so that's why maybe the behavior changed from previous versions. Okay. Okay, just reading through different comments. So we just see, thanks, Greg. This is from John Costigan about 64-bit precision when using on the mix, effects, etc. So it can, but not all plugins will do it. If you wanted to go to the plugin manager, so let's say we go here to the VST plugin manager. I think one of the things that you'll see, so let's say if we select and we go to the, I think it might actually indicate if it allows for 60, if it is 64-bit processing. So let me just. That there was a way to see if it was actually 64-bit processing capable in the plugin manager. I know all the built-in Cubase ones are. So let's say if we go to our VST effects and okay, so if we go to this little menu here, you could say show plugins that support 64-bit floating point processing. So that you could see, and if you're not using any of those, you probably won't benefit. But most of the internal plugins will do 64-bit. So try doing just an A/B test, John, and see if that makes a difference if you hear it. All right, so we see Pablo's at dinner time, but it was probably a while ago. So. See a great comment from Neil Conway. Says, I'm just saying, I'm still dumbfounded by how much is in Cubase. I just picked up the Groove Agent in Halion 6. Wow, wow, wow. So it's a deep program. Okay, so you see from John Moore, quick question, Cubase 11 Pro on Mac. I can't seem to figure out how to edit attributes, e.g. subcategory, character, etc. in the media bay. What am I missing? So I think some of the attributes might be fixed, but if you wanted to perhaps add your own attributes, so let's say if we come over here to media bay, so now we could at this point take if we go over here to sorry about this, let's say okay, so we have our attribute inspector here. So we could see defined, but what you could do is if you click on dynamic, but you could choose defined. And once you do that, you could actually, if you don't see, different attributes that you want here, you could enable a number of different attributes. So let's say if we just come over, sorry about that. So there's a number of different ones, subcategory, substyle, bar count, GM sound, all these different attributes. And if you wanted to create your own, if necessary, you could do it based on text, numbers, yes or no. And then you could have your user-defined attributes as well. But I think a lot of those are kind of common to many databasing for audio, for different styles and genres. All right, so see Walter Blackledge. Great to see you on the live stream. That he bought the full-blown WaveLab Pro during the promotion, so it was a great deal. Congratulations, great to see you on the live stream. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so you see from Kevin, I have Boss wireless guitar, Katana Air, and Waza Air. I have the wireless transmitter when both apps or just one. Will you be able to Boss wireless guitar with Cubase 11 or 12? So I don't think that is going to be set up to transmit audio, but you would need to have probably some type of receiver on the, I'm not familiar with the Boss. My assumption is that it won't, it's not designed to be an audio interface. So, so if it's, even if it's transmitting stuff to an app, that it may not be, might be doing remote control, but, if it's an audio interface, you could connect that to your computer as an audio interface. Okay, so we see a question from Neil. Says, sorry if this is a silly question, but I see my Tascam 24 in Cubase, hoping to send audio track out of T24 and use its bus to aux out to my Moog. Let's see, it's a Moog Siren and back in, which is best clock. Okay, so let me just take a quick look at what the Tascam 24 is, if it's just an audio interface. So let me just look at it quickly online. Sorry, I'll get the mic. I'm just going to look at what the Moog Siren is here. Okay, I'm just going to look at Tascam. Okay, so it's kind of a mixer. All right. All right, so it says, sorry for silly question, but I see my Tascam 24 in Cubase, hoping to send audio track out to the T24 and use its bus to aux out to Moog Siren and back in. Which is the best clock? So probably what you want to do, so if the Moog, it just kind of saw a picture of it, and I just saw it was like Taurus pedal, so maybe it's like a Taurus pedal type of thing. But if you want it to, if it's just responding to MIDI, you could just send MIDI clock. If it's something like that needs to be synced timing wise, like arpeggiators, is going to the transport. And at this point, when you go to the project synchronization setup, over USB or MIDI to it, you could just simply transmit MIDI clock or MIDI time code. So when you say, what's the best clock? I would just have, if you need clock to the device, just send it from the project synchronization setup, and that should be able to handle it. And, the audio out could go into the Tascam 24, which is kind of like a mixer interface from what I saw. Okay, when will Cubase support wireless guitar? It's very popular. Will and hope Cubase will come up with an update to teach us how to, teach me how to use it in a Zoom meeting. So, if the wireless guitar, there's obviously a zillion audio interfaces that have standard drivers that work with Cubase just fine. But, if the wireless guitar doesn't have an audio interface component, it's not up to Cubase to really, come up with a wireless guitar to audio converter. They could just simply have, if the device itself is not capable of recording or transmitting to your computer wirelessly, then, I wouldn't expect Steinberg to do that. It's pretty easy to understand that, the signal, that you use an audio interface for recording into your computer, and there's different things that could function as audio interfaces. But if that device doesn't do it, then Steinberg's not going to probably make that happen for you. It would be up to the manufacturer of that hardware to create the capability for that hardware to function in that way. Okay, so you see a question. I've been scratching my head trying to get my Korg Kronos to synchronize to Cubase. So 16 MIDI tracks on Kronos to start and record to Cubase while playing or recording on a Kronos and push record. So really probably what you want to do if you want to transfer the tracks over is, add, let's do a new MIDI track. I'll just do a new project here. All right, and you probably just want to add a MIDI track. In the MIDI track, we could assign different channels, and with this, just put it onto channel any. Try going to your transport menu to project synchronization setup. You probably have a USB connection for the Korg, so what you want to do is to just send MIDI clock out to the Korg, so you can send, MIDI clock or MIDI time code, tell the Korg to listen to external sync. You may have to put it in external sync or external clock. And then once you've done that, you want to go to the Cubase transport and make sure that the project synchronizate, that you have activate external sync turned on. And now once you do that, you would just kind of hit record, and then that, I believe, would capture all the outputs from the Korg. So make sure that you have this set up to, not, to like all MIDI inputs. And then you'll have all 16 MIDI channels on one particular track. Go to MIDI, and then choose to dissolve part, and that will split each different MIDI channel into different tracks in Cubase. Many of the workstations also will allow you to export a MIDI file, so that's something else you might be able to do. All right, so we just see, is it possible to make a big slide in VariAudio between two notes? Yeah, let's see if I can do something wildly inappropriate for this. So let's say I just wanted to jump over here. Let's go to our VariAudio menu. Okay. You know, so if we wanted to, and we set our smart controls here from the VariAudio to all, once you're here, you know, we could just, so let's say our notes are set up like this. I could extend the length of a particular note out. So I could just come here and say, okay, I want to extend that out. And now what I could do is I could just come right over here and just move the pitch to kind of to just kind of come over and adjust kind of the, so if you want to glide into, a particular note, you could just kind of have the pitch just go directly there and go up. So that's how you could do a big slide. All right, so we see question, is it, from Charles K, great that you could make the live stream, is it possible to colorize a track when adding an audio track? So as long as, depending on your preference, so again, if we come over here to your preferences, and we go to track and mix console channel colors, so we could just say, I wanted to use last applied color, so let's say I'm here. So now as I go to add an audio track, I can come right over here. Let's add an audio track. So we say audio, it will automatically, I'll make this project active, that would help. So now that that preference is set, as we add an audio track, it could automatically, and I'll just pop over here to the preferences again. So you just say, use previous track color +1. So as we add an audio track, come right over here. That would add the track with the color. So you could do it like that. See, nice comment from John Moore. Thanks, Greg. You went above and beyond and showed me more that I didn't know. Appreciate it. So glad it helped. All right, and we see Tim Weinheimer. Great to see you on the live stream. All right, so we see from Neil Conway, says, thank you, Greg. You do a yeoman's job. Guess it's how it's pronounced. I probably mispronounced it. And been a huge part of me deciding to buy more Steinberg products, so it's great, and we appreciate you being on the live stream today. So we have a question. Can you draw a line in VariAudio, add vibrato to a note? So we can't add vibrato in, and for the most part, I've never needed to add vibrato in on a voice, but I've had to take it out a lot. So, if you So one singer I used to work with who, was, and we used to teach. I played in a band with her in college, and she's kind of a very much a dramatic singer, and came up in kind of musical theater. And we used to always kid her, it's like, oh, we had to take away your, we used to call it her Broadway vibrato, and we used to tease her about it in college. But then she went and became like Miss Saigon on Broadway, so she did okay. But so a lot of times, I was doing some tracking with her. I just had to take a vibrato off, tame it a little so it was more stylistically correct. But we can't add vibrato in. But it's rare that I feel the need to do that. But I can see where it could be helpful. All right, so we see Pablo's back from dinner. Right. And we see Sable Winters on the live stream. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the information on Daryl. I appreciate that. Okay, so we see from Neil Conway, Greg, more specifically, I was concerned about latency as the track plays in Cubase to Tascam track to aux to Siren, a high-pitched Taurus to 24 and back into the audio track on the 24 to Cubase. So, most of, the audio path could be really small. I would, if you're going to send MIDI to it, so if it's, the latency on that path could be very minimal, because the record latency will be compensated for. So I don't think you'll have a problem. All right, so just seeing this may be a follow-up for the Korg question, transferring from the Korg Kronos. It says an MMC control the transport from Korg to Cubase for start-stop record. So probably a lot of the controllers aren't going to be doing MMC. It's not as popular as it was, but if we wanted to... when you go to your project synchronization setup, you could go to machine control. So if you wanted to, set up your MIDI machine control settings there, but a lot of times most of the transports don't transmit MIDI machine control, but if it does, Cubase could work with it. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to calculate the MIDI delay time compensation for external hardware synths? So generally, the MIDI itself, doesn't really, is the latency is not an issue. And Cubase knows how to compensate through that through the MIDI timing engines of Mac OS or Windows. And, for the external instruments, as we, unlike, the external instruments, if I get to the right window here, get to the right computer's right window, the external instruments, when we add those, we have outputs and inputs, whereas the external effects are going to have inputs and outputs, so we need to kind of go out, but we're not sending audio out to the device. We're just sending MIDI and capturing the inputs. So the external instruments, that only has a return bus, because one, we're not sending audio to the instruments. We're just sending MIDI data and capturing that back. And since Cubase knows when it's being sent out, it knows how to offset any of the delays for the external instruments as the audio is being processed into Cubase or recorded. So it's not really needed. All right, so we see from Las Vegas, Greg, how can I score 2 separate lines simultaneously on one staff on Cubase Score Pro 11 without interfering with each other? All right, so we'll do new project here. Okay, so we'll call this trumpet, flute, or let's make it trumpet, piano. All right, so I'm just going to enter in some blank parts. So just double click between the left and right locators. I'll select both of these events and go into my score editor. So we can see I have my piano and my trumpet. So now as I go to enter in different values, let's say, okay, I want to put in quarter notes on my trumpet. So I have this line next to it. We can come right over here and put in step entry. So and let's say, okay, so let's say maybe I wanted like for piano, so I'll undo that. And let's say I want my piano to be a grand staff. So I'll say, okay, let's come here and I want that to be split. All right, so now I'll put in, and we'll just switch it over to page mode here. So I'm going to put in my trumpet part. Or I have this on my piano voice now. But if I go to my, so I have trumpet here. So now as I wanted to, and it's not affecting. And let's say starting now, I just wanted to input on the piano. And let's put in just half notes for chord. So I could just kind of create 2 different parts, and you could create empty parts, select them both, go into the score editor, and just by clicking to the left of the stave, you could choose which voice that you're working with and, you know, its value as you enter in notation. So that's how you keep it separate. So we see, how can we send tips to me? If it's like tips on how to do this better, you could always send me an email. But if it's a financial thing, it's part of my job. So I just do this as part of my job. So I get paid for my job. But you could always send nice letters to Yamaha in the US or to Steinberg and let them know that you appreciate the live streams. All right, so we see, is there a way to show and hide all plugin GUIs? Question. So yeah, there is I think it's in a Windows menu. So let's say if I have an audio track here with a number of plugins. All right, so let's say I have lots of plugin windows open and I don't want to close every one of the plugins independently. So if we just go to the Windows menu, there's a close all plugin windows command. So once again, Windows, close all plugin windows. Okay, so we just see, can you please show us the simplest way to calculate latency from singing records, some singing recordings maybe? If you wanted to, like if you have two audio files, and, maybe they're like slightly different times, and you wanted to calculate that, let's go take a quick look. If you select, let's say in the event, you could do some math and say this, like this point, is like, let's say we had the same file and you wanted to calculate the distance between them. So if you needed to do something like, okay, I'm here, I could now choose to, insert the left locator. So we can say set left locator at project cursor position. And let's say, okay, I needed this to be, and then you could also say set right locator to project cursor position. And then when you actually click on the range here, you could, so let's say if you could calculate the range difference. So let's say if I want to, like, even, so, if it's comparing two different recordings, you could see the range length here, and that could be determined if you're in seconds. So you can see this is, the difference between these two recordings is 580 milliseconds. So if you just kind of even select the range tool to start here, and it needs to end right there, you could calculate in milliseconds and bars and beats. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. All right, we see JVI just apologizing for his tardiness. Thanks for these fantastic hangouts. Once again, there's no consequences of being late. Just the only consequence is if you show up late, you have to hit the like button. So. All right, so you see just kind of more comments on external instrument latency. So is there a way to calculate the audio return from the external instrument, because there is a certain latency, milliseconds, to be on point? So, if you have the audio recording, you could just, once you have the audio recorded, if you wanted to compare it with the MIDI from the first note of the MIDI to when the first note of the audio is, and then you could do that. But also check out, if you go to the studio setup to the audio system, make sure that you have adjust for record latency checked there as well. Okay, so we see from Fab, says, hi, Greg, thanks for your always enlightening streams. Well, thanks for being a part of the live stream today, and thank you for the kind words. All right, so just see a question. Any chance, sorry, my chat field jumped on me. Okay, we see question, any chance Cubase 12 will give us the option to remap the F1 key to our choice rather than the user manuals? So I think that, like, we have to have particular things to like, have a Windows logo or a Mac OS logo in, for the programs to be kind of, logoed, which is kind of a big deal for developers. And I think that the F1 key, like on Windows, is fixed to help. So like, just about every Windows program will force you into that. We used to get criticized heavily before we did that. And, so, so I think that that's going to be fixed by the operating system. So maybe you could reach out to Microsoft and see if they'll change that. All right, we see JVI says just on a close all plugin windows. Forgot about that. Really handy. Thanks for the reminder. So thanks for whoever asked a question as well. All right, so we see, thank you, Greg. Is there a possible way to transform a recorded guitar into tablature in Cubase or score or MIDI to be transformed into guitar profile later? Thank you. So, if we have, MIDI guitar parts, let me see, I may have... Let me just open up a project here. This always plays a weird chord, but so, we could do it with MIDI stuff quite easily. So if, or if it's just a monophonic guitar part. So let's say if I'm here and I just wanted to look at like an electric guitar part here. And let's look at distant score. I'll find a better part. All right, so let's say I have this part here in MIDI, and what I want to do is, double click, we'll go into the score settings, and we could just put it into tablature mode. And then I could just come right over here and hit apply, and we could choose that, if I wanted to mirror the staff or not, I could come here. We could also, if you have chords, you can do... so if that's what tablature is, you could also come over here and, if we have chords in the project, that we could take those into, your guitar diagrams if you wanted to. So if you wanted to come over to like, guitar diagrams, and you could have a library of these. So let's say we go to our cymbals. Sorry, not sure why his project always does that. But as soon as we go to our cymbals, you can come over here and have the guitar chords and the chord diagrams. Let me just... So if you wanted to add these as well, if that's what you mean, so you could just, and there's entire libraries of those. So that's guitar diagrams, and this is the tablature. So we could do both of those things in Cubase quite easily, or just have it actually make chords for you and print it out in chord charts. But So yeah, you could do that. Okay, so we have a question for Greg that lets him decide about the top 5 most hidden features in Cubase worth learning, even if maybe not so intuitive at first for the live recording musician. For the live recording musician, so if you are tracking, let's see if I could come up with some that makes sense. Let's do one is to always, put each project into its own folder. If you're doing live tracking where you have a lot of tracks, so let's say if I wanted to come here and we're tracking a live thing, maybe 24 tracks, it's always good, like, when I've recorded festivals, like, Eric Clapton festivals and stuff I've been involved with, one of the things that I would do is, move all these tracks to a new folder, and then I could record enable just the folder and not have to do each one independently. Something that a lot of people miss is when you come over here, you double click and you name files. If you hit the tab key, that'll take you to the next field and show that it will allow you to just kind of name files without having to click and do stuff like that. There's also a record mode that a lot of people miss. It's really handy. Is, let's say I'm here and I'm recording, all right, and it's inevitable that you'll have false starts or someone just screws up. And many times when we stop, we can keep all that recording, and then a lot of times what people do is they just kind of throw it away and rewind and go back to the area. But if we go to the record mode, and we'll see the audio that we could place it into re-record mode. So let's say I'm tracking, I'm here, okay, we're going to record, and let's say it's a false start or someone just totally messed up, I could hit the record button again, and it'll just take me right to that spot, get rid of the tracks, and then just start recording. So we say, let's do a different take. Boom. And as we do this, that will just automatically get rid of the other files for you. I also, when tracking for live musicians, if you are doing stuff quick, you may always want to keep different things. If you're recording a whole band, select all the files and just say new track version. And we can say, oh yeah, let's do that. Awesome. And, come over here and just record. And if you needed to jump back to the first take, you could do that. One of the things I'll always suggest to people is always record everything. So, if, I often tell the bands that, okay, we're going to record, I'm just doing a sound check. Why don't you run through it? I'm just getting my levels. You run through it so I could be ready for you when I'm ready. And then I will, I used to always tell the band, it's like, and they go, okay, we're ready. It's like, well, that was a perfect take you guys just did for your sound check. So, we have everything we need. And right, because when you hit record psychologically, it could really throw people off. So I find that if you tell them not, that you're not recording and you're just constantly recording everything, that can make a big difference in the psychology. I was talking with Gary Pachoza this week, who's a wonderful, highly esteemed engineer, has way more Grammys than I'll ever see in my life in anyone else's room, and he was just telling me, he's like, he's like really hands-on, and he has extra mics around all the time. So if he wants to try a different mic, it's moving the mic stand and not having to patch a cable, find an XLR cable, all that stuff. So always being prepared to record with different sources quickly and don't lose the inspiration. So hopefully that's helpful, but if that's not what you wanted, just let me know. But those are some things that you can do in Cubase that can maybe not as obvious, but can make a big difference in kind of just speeding up your workflow. See, John Costigan says his revelation today is the close all plugin windows function. It was just sitting there right in the open for everyone. All right. You see, question, where do I get my Cubase cap? So sometimes when new versions are out, we will sometimes have, different marketing materials made. I think, we don't have anyone in our office yet in California to actually, send some of those things out and find them in a warehouse. So, but maybe as the office opens, we might be able to find some. So if you want to email me, Jeff at clubcubase@steinberg.de, we could see. And I think in Europe you could buy it at the European online shop. Okay, see Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. And Jazz Dude just pulled out his F1 key. Okay, we're just reading through more comments. So thanks for all the great comments. All right, so we see from Soren, ain't it kind of a new thing that loops and samples can't be used with YouTube Content ID? It sort of kills royalty-free loop packs and Cubase media, I think, but Content ID perhaps not a must. So I'm not too familiar with the YouTube Content ID. So, I know, I can't tell you that the content that comes with Cubase, all the loops and sound files that, you could use those, in your productions without worry. But I could do some more research on it. All right, so we see from Luca just saying that tab key shortcut. Wow, wow, wow. So yeah, that's a good one to know. So be aware of that one and use it wisely. So, if you're getting paid by the hour, it's okay to kind of type in, I know many old school engineers who, like, when they would rewind the tape, would constantly, that was like their 30 seconds of vacation, so and I remember getting to do a session with Phil Ramone once, and he was kind of the king of kind of padding time into sessions, and he did it masterfully. So it was kind of funny, in some cases. I'll share it in his Zoom. I'll share it in next week's Zoom if you ask me. So. Okay, so we just see a question. How can I comp from different comp versions? Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so I'm not sure if you have, let's say, different track versions. So let's say if I come here and I'm doing a new track version. So I will come over here and let's just do another track version. So let me just So I'll just switch to do a new version here. And if we wanted to now create a comp between different track versions, okay, so let's say I could switch between, version 1, version 2, and version 3. Okay, so let's say if I come over here, we'll say new version. So what I want to do now is say, okay, let's go to version 1, and I want to select all of the content here. And I think if we go to edit, what we want to do is do a global copy. And go to version. Okay, so let's say, just come here. So let's say measure 22. Okay, so let's say now I will do a global copy. So go to range, global copy. Let's go to version 4, and we could paste at origin. Okay, so now let's say I want to go to version 3, and I want this to start kind of right there. So now I could select all of these files in version 3. Let's go to, and again, just global copy, switch to version 4, and paste at origin. So once again, so you could just kind of come over here and piece together your different track versions into complete takes. So just create a new version, do global copy, and paste time at origin. And then you could do new versions and compile different takes from different track versions. All right. So we say, about the question about guitar into tab. So if we want to do like a real audio file, so VariAudio will do like a monophonic part, such as maybe like a guitar solo. You could do that, but it's not going to do chords. So let's say if I'm here and I wanted to take, I think we have a guitar solo in this. So let me just. Okay, so let's say if we're here, let's do a quick VariAudio on this. And let's convert it into MIDI under functions. We'll extract MIDI. Then let's look at it in our score editor. So we'll just come right over here and convert it to tab. So you could do stuff like that, but it's not going to be doing chords and figuring out, it could be nearly impossible to figure out like, the same guitar voicings across, the same chords spread across multiple guitar voicings. All right, so we just see, is it possible to render plugins without direct offline option? So if you wanted to, you could just, it would kind of be using that in the background. But if you wanted to just say, okay, I want to do plugins and I just wanted to now come over here and add a delay, I could just say, okay, let's add a ping pong delay. And I want this to be, a quarter note ping pong delay, that would... So you could just say, okay, now so this will kind of do it, but a more direct approach. You could just say, okay, I just want to come over here to plugins and I want to take that file and run it through, a flanger. So now we do this and I'll just click on the auto apply. So now. So you could just do stuff like it still kind of runs through the offline processing engine, but you don't have to do the direct offline processing. You could just come right over here and, just go from your audio menu to plugins. That could be all you'd have to do with that. So that's another approach to doing it. Let me know if that works and makes sense. Okay, just reading through some more comments, questions. Thanks for all the great questions. See how we're doing on time. So, all right, we're doing well. All right, just reading through more questions, comments. All right, so we just see a comment. Thank you, Greg, for the comp track versions answer. It's going to save tons of time for a project that I've been trying to finish for a month now. You're a lifesaver, so glad it's helpful. You see Michael Pierce is also saying about track versions is definitely going to experiment with track versions soon. So I'm sure the workflow could be transformative. Yeah, so it's really slick once you do it. And I like using it for editing, like duplicate a track and do all sorts of weird editing and be able to jump right back. All right, so Pablo's accusing me of flanging everyone with that guitar solo, probably. Okay, so I think I'm at the end of the questions. I'm going to go ahead. I know we had a couple of questions that were sent in, so let me jump over to those. Thanks for all the great questions. Okay, before I do that, I just saw a question pop in. So we see, how do you select specific keys in the logical editor? So if you wanted to select notes, so let's say we go to, let's just do this before we jump over. Or just add a quick instrument track. Okay, so let's say if we go to our logical editor, we can now come over and say, okay, we want to select. So I'm not sure if you want to select notes in D major. So we'll say type is equal to note. So I think we could have it automatically say value 1 is transpose to scale. So we could come over here and select notes that are in D major if you wanted to, or so those are different things that you could do. So let's say, so I don't think that will select all of them. Let me just remove that. All right, so yeah, you could just do this. So let's say if I want to put in a so there, we could select all notes. And if you wanted to, you could say value 1 is equal to you can say note is equal to D, E, F sharp, G. So, so we could do stuff like that within the logical editor. So it's not tied necessarily to a specific D1, D3, D4, or something like that. And we could say, okay, if I want to do this for D major, we could say note is equal to D. And then we'll add just kind of Boolean conditions or E. So we could, so, as we do this, we could just kind of spread it out to D, specify all the notes within the chord. All right, so we have Chris Hallam checking in from Columbia, South Carolina. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have a question. Greg, how long have you been working for Yamaha Steinberg, if I may ask? So I've been a Yamaha employee. It'll be 17 years on February 28th. So in a couple weeks, I'll be 17 years with Yamaha. On April 20th of this year, it'll be 30 years with Steinberg. So I started when I was 10. Just kidding. All right, so we have David M. checking in from Liverpool. Thanks for joining us. We keep hearing about bad storms in UK. We hope you're doing okay. Thanks for joining us for the live stream. All right. So I just see from Jason just asking, can you do this technique while selecting every other note? So, if you wanted to select, every other note, you could probably do it. But if you could just remind me of exactly if you could tell me, if you could just remind me exactly what you want the letters to be, or what you want every other note in addition to what? So you just see from Neil says, is the address to the office to send letters to Steinberg Media Technologies? So I think that's the address, but I don't think that there's anyone going to the office. So you could probably just, mention something on social media, or I think you could send it maybe to info@steinberg.de if you want to pass on comments about the live stream, good or bad. If you think they're awful or good, you can probably send it to that, or send it to, there's probably a generic email address, or if you want to email me directly, I could give you some other email addresses. It's probably a better way of doing it. All right, so we see just a comment, Steinberg should sell Supervision as a plugin. It's the best. We'll sell the plugin and you get a free DAW with it that does all sorts of amazing things. But we're glad you like it. And there'll be some cool developments for it coming as well, I think, in the near future. So. All right, so we see how can I include harmony parts with a lead vocal in Cubase Score Pro 11 on the same staff without interfering with each other. Okay, so let's go ahead and we just go to Score View here. I'll just... Okay, so let's come over here. So let's say we have a melody line. See if we could do this easily. All right, so let's say I'll just come here and let me see if I have. Okay, so this is, so let's say if I come here and I just wanted to like insert so I'm going to just grab my notes. So let's say we have our melody here and now I just wanted to put harmonies in. Oh, that's a lovely harmony. All right, so let's say if I just wanted to so, you know, there we can just add our different voicings directly like that. So we can have our melody and just kind of add harmonies directly onto the score. So let me know if that's what you want to do, or if you want it, if they're on different tracks or something like that. All right, so all right, so we just see, hey, are you guys going to come up with a pad controller for Groove Agent? I'll buy it. So, you know, I think that most of the pad controllers kind of work really well with Groove Agent as is. We had a little CMC pad, you know, and it's no longer available. It was kind of manufactured by Yamaha, and a lot of people really like the pad, you know, but, you know, it really, you know, the functionality of software really works well with any pad that's available. So, you know, I think this, you know, what makes Groove Agent special is just in the software and not necessarily in the pad that's accessing it. But I'll mention that again. All right, so we just see logical editor is super deep. Would be cool if Steinberg could publish some more useful or strange setups other than the ones that are in the menus. So, you know, I have sent over a lot of different presets for Logical Editor to Steinberg a while ago, so maybe they'll make it into future versions. I'm not sure yet. Okay, so I see from Jason says select every other note in a specific key. Okay, so let me just come here. And I will go to my scale assistant. So let's say we're going to be in D major, and I want to so let's say I wanted to snap my live input. I'll put it into, okay, so I'll just move my playhead position. I'll just do it with a new part. All right, so I'm just gonna just randomly go in my controller. And now I've snapped everything to D major, but I'll just make it. We'll say D major here. So all right, so now all the notes, we are in D major, but let's say now I wanted to snap into C, we'll make it A major. Let's do something different, F sharp. Okay, so if we want to select every other note that's in D major, so let's see if we come over here to Logical Editor. All right, so we'll say okay, so let's say we want to say value 1. I'll just do all right, just find this. I'll just do a couple of the notes here within the scale. All right, so that'll get us some, and so say last event. And we'll say every other event counter 1. So this should, if I did this right, so you could do something. that. So I may have to kind of do this event counter. Let's see if I do this. So yeah, that's what you could do. So, so now it's selecting every other note that's either D, E, F sharp, G, A, G, and I could add an A, B, and a C sharp if I wanted to. But that's how you could create a logical editor preset for that. Okay, so just see question, can you set up your studio name to appear in a printout of tab? Maybe a strange question. So this will look awful in my notation editor, but let's say as we look at particular parts and we want to see this in tablature, so we'll come over here and say, okay, we get our scores menu, we get a page mode, and if I want it to see this in tab, you know, really all you have to do is just enter text in, and you can say, you know, guitar track studios, you know, so you could actually just enter in text freely. So if you, as you print it out, if you wanted to include that text, you could do that quite easily. All right, you see everyone's having weird weather, so I think we'll have to get used to that, unfortunately. Okay. Okay, so we just see a nice comment. Thank you so much. This is priceless information, not just for me, but for many others. I really appreciate your help. So I'm glad to be able to help people and teach them about how to use their tools better. Okay, so I mentioned before we would take a look at some of the questions that were mailed in. So, and one of the mailed in questions, I found a solution to a question from last live stream, and it was about notation. So let me open up a file to show this. All right, so so the question was, we discussed this last time, I couldn't find a easy solution, but I think I found it now, was, you know, when we look at, you know, how to see only the selected parts in the score editor. So if I'm looking at a particular note event here, so let's say I'm looking at this in the score editor, but maybe I don't have one contiguous part, maybe I have multiple projects in. So if we come over here and split the event, so I'll just say, okay, we're going to split, and I wanted to just print out just these measures. So when you go to the score editor, often we would see what's before and after. And when we come over here, and this is a preference that I found after kind of playing around with it under scores. So what it would do by default is, let me just find the scores. So under editing, we'll see this unlock layer when selecting single parts. So with that unchecked, and when I go to look at just these particular selected measures in this event, and we look at it in our score editor, we see blank measures before and after that often get printed out, which is kind of annoying. And it's, I just wanted to print these measures out for the musician. So if I don't want to see, right? So if I don't want to see all the empty parts before or after that are on that track, I want it to be event-based versus track-based. Come over here to preferences and scores to editing, and we want to check unlock layout when editing single parts. So now, instead of seeing all these unnecessary rests, when I select the event and go into the score editor, I only see the measures of what I've selected. So that was for John Carroll, who's, if you Google him, he's an amazing musician and great songwriter and been in some huge bands over time. So just incredibly talented guy. Okay, so we had a question. Could you go through the benefits there are to work with libraries in Cubase? I can read in the help that it's good for collecting different files for easy migrating to another project, but I don't get the big idea. So libraries are, when we have a project, we can have our library set up as a pool. So we could have a pool with the project, and a pool is associated with the project. And anytime that we record audio into the project, or an audio file has been referenced in the project, it's going to show up in the pool. So the pool keeps track of all the audio files for a particular project. Now, at times, like if you're a composer, or let's say you work, and we have lots of people do this working with jingles, like maybe if you're doing like one of my friends does a lot of jingles for Walmart, and, different companies will have their little like, da, 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 whatever their signature sound is, like their corporate, branding, audible identity. And they may have different sounds that are doing that. Or if you're working on a film project and you get to do the sequel, many composers will design new sounds for each film. But then if you go to a new project, maybe you want to be able to have access to sounds from a different project in your current project. So if that's the case, let's say, like I know I have a friend that does a lot of stuff. He's doing it for a major network, and, he would take this, his job was to say, coming next week, and they would have all these recordings, and then he would have different recordings on Thursday, on next Wednesday, in 2 nights, in tomorrow, tonight, and they would just have different variations of the little promotion. And he would be the guy that would have to say, okay, here's a version that you run on Wednesday. This is the version you run on Tuesday. This is for a week before. This is for a month before, coming soon, all that different stuff. So what he would do is just have a pool, and we could think of this as a collection of audio files that's independent of the project. So now we could take files from a pool, whether it's like corporate identity sound effects or different, audio tags, or, days of the week, numbers, phone numbers, so that these could be from a project, a different project, or just, files are going to be used all the time for clients. And then we could save that pool as what's called a library. So we could export a library directly from the pool window. So as soon as we come over here, we could save a library. So we could do a new library, and then we could open the library, and then we could just have all of our audio files in the project. And if you need to say, oh, this is the corporate identity logo for this, I need this for that file, you just simply drag it out from the pool that's saved independently of the project. So think of it as a collection of audio files that could be used independently of the particular project. Okay. All All right, so we see a question. Greg, in the recent Cubase Pro 11.04 project, I had 22 stereo songs of different lengths, each on its own audio track, and I wanted to add them all to the export queue as separate jobs. But I ended up exporting each track one at a time without using the queue because they're differing lengths. Required setting up the locators for each stem. Is there a way I could have done this more efficiently? And this is from Eric in Tucson. So let's come over here and show you a trick. So let's say if we had a number of different files, I'll just kind of create this quickly. Okay, so let's say I came here. Okay, so if I was in this situation, what I would do is just say, okay, I'm going to take each of these files. Okay, so let's say, I had each of these were my songs in my project. And, if we wanted to be smart about the exporting, I would use this in conjunction with cycle markers. So I'm going to add a marker track, and then I'm just going to create a bunch of cycle markers. So I'm going to select the event, hit P, and then add a cycle marker, just this little icon here, and there's keyboard shortcuts you could do for this. Let's come over here. I will select the next event, P, and then we'll click on add cycle markers. So I'm just setting the left and right locators around each of these events. So each song could have its own cycle marker. So I'll just not make a mistake this time. Okay, so these are all differing lengths. And as we do this, what we want to do, again, is if we wanted to export these all, not to be one at a time, which you could do. It's great if you get paid by the hour. But if we have all these markers, now when we go to export, we can say, okay, let's do an export audio mixdown. And we could see that I want to export all these, but I could say export with cycle markers. And now each of the cycle markers that I created will automatically be rendered as individual files. So let's say I have 11 cycle markers, and now I'm going to choose to export audio, and I'll create new audio tracks. So as we do this, we'll watch the export happen, and I'm not going to do it in real time. So I'll uncheck that. It'll take too long. So say we'll just come over here. So we see it'll go through each of these different cycle markers and create the audio files based upon the cycle markers. We'll just have it render out here. So now each of these will be rendered as its own separate audio file. And we could see that they're all going to be just rendered based on the selection. So you don't have to do it one by one. Place a cycle marker at each one and then just render away. And when you go to the cycle markers, we could just do an export audio mix down and base it and activate all of the cycle markers. All right, so I think those questions that were mailed in this week. So let me jump back to our discussion. Thanks for all the great questions. Let's take a look. Hope everyone has learned something new. Okay, just finding my place. All right, you may hear my son who just got home from school. So we see from Nick, question, did I hear Greg say earlier that Cubase 12 will not work on Intel Macs, only new Silicon? No, it'll work on Intel and Silicon and Apple M1 processors, so no worries there, Nick. Sorry if I created any confusion. But the new one will be, working on both. So see comment from Jeff Sabelski says no more Duo Core 2 Duo MacBook Pro served its purpose for today a long time ago. So yeah, I like my Core 2 Duo MacBook at the time. So it's probably one of my favorite Macs I had. They seem to like them less as time goes on, but my new i9's been pretty good. Here you see Michael Pierce has to bow out, so thanks for joining us. We'll see you on Tuesday. Sable Winters is calling me a goat. So, okay. All right. So I'm just seeing, hi Greg, we'll work on AMD. So yeah, so we have many happy AMD users. So, all right, let's see. So it's just the comment just saying they say that when you stop learning something new every day, you grow and maybe grow old, or So thanks to you, Greg. I'll be forever young. So I'm glad I could help share knowledge. Yeah. All right. I think it's good to learn something new every day. So, all right. So I think I'm out of questions. I'll give it another minute or two. I want to thank everyone for all their great questions. Okay, so you see Nick has made all the logical editor presets for that, so that's great. I'll see if I could pass them on to Steinberg as well. So, see Sable Winters thanking Michael Teams for bringing ice cream. Okay, so we see a question from Luca. Is there a schedule for the following meetings? Are they happening on fixed days? So generally we have, on Tuesdays and Fridays, we do these. So that's what we've been doing. And I if I have to travel, like I traveled a bit this week, so then I'll try to, as best I can, fit my travel schedule around the live streams, but generally Tuesdays and Fridays. And next Friday will be the last live stream of the month. We already got through February really quickly. So we'll have our Zoom meetup on Friday. So I'll have a link prepared that I could share starting on Tuesday for the next live stream. All right, so we're seeing great learning today as always. Thanks, Greg. You're welcome. So. All right, so just see, Soren, the system requirements for Absolute 4 and Absolute 5 is different. How sensitive is Absolute 5 to system requirements? Can you run it on lower specs? I guess it's Backbone that wants more specs. So sometimes they just don't, there's so many operating systems to test in different versions, so they may not, sometimes it's not that it won't work, but they haven't tested it. At a certain point, if you think about like every Mac OS version and its 7 bug fixes, to do that for 3 versions of Mac OS or 4 versions, that could be 7 versions of each OS, and doing testing for that, and every update for Windows as well. So so that it may work, but you could definitely give it a try. I think there's a Backbone trial version that you could try as well and see how it works on your system. All right, so we just see how do we sign up for the Zoom cast. So generally what we do for the last meeting of the month is I'll post a link usually in the live stream, but if you want to email me to clubcubase@steinberg.de, it'll just be a link, and it's kind of a way for people on the live streams to meet each other and kind of hang out and get to know each other. And it's always like really fascinating conversations and discussions that go on. I look forward to it every month. So there's nothing special you have to do, but we'll share the link in the next live stream. So. All right, so with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up a little early. We know in the U.S. it's a holiday weekend, and where I live, it's actually taken very seriously because I live just a mile. I live about 2 or 3 miles from George Washington's house, so we actually have a President's Day parade in my local town. But I want to wish everyone in the U.S. a happy holiday weekend if you're celebrating that, and everyone around the world. We know there's lots of crazy weather, so everyone please stay safe. And of course, with COVID situations, everyone please stay safe and healthy. And we look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday and next Friday for the Zoom meetup. So everyone have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Take care.